At the time of this recording, Catalina is the latest operating system with Big Sur just about ready to release. Whatever Mac OS that you happen to be running, know that the information to follow will still apply. And on behalf of any PC users who happen to be watching, Windows Mac OS comparisons will be mentioned along the way. Irregardless as to whether you're on a Mac or a PC, any given function, such as opening or closing a document window or printing that document, can all be executed in more than one way. These multiple options will be mentioned as we go, and you can decide which one suits you best. But as you decide, know that hotkeys better allow you to get into a state of flow as you work. Compare your hotkey skills to Stephen King's typing skills. Were he to focus more on his keyboard than his storylines, we'd see a lot less of him at the box office. And so, commit as many hotkeys as you can to memory. Hotkeys are associated with Mac OS as well as with the applications that you'll be running on Mac OS. Omnipresent in pull-down menus, these hotkeys will always include at least one of three essential keys which are found on either side of the spacebar. Mirrored at opposite ends of the spacebar, those keys are the Command key, which is the equivalent to the Control key on a PC, the Option key, which is the equivalent of the Alt key on a PC, and the Control key here on a Mac is not to be confused with the Control key used on a PC. For the most part, the Control key on a Mac shares the same functionality as right-clicking, which will later be demonstrated. And while on the topic of right-clicking, we'll be doing a bit of that in this tour, and the mouse isn't set up for that by default, so we'll soon be taking care of that in the System Preferences panel. The desktop is the gateway to all things stored on your computer and to all things connected to it. Providing access to all of that are three primary sections: the top menu, the desktop itself, and the dock. Desktop functionality is integrated with two key components, which are the System Preferences panel and the Finder window. In this desktop tour, we'll focus on features in these panels which tie directly into the desktop, and then remaining key items in these panels will be taken on in dedicated videos. In the far left corner of the top menu is the Apple menu, which includes some pretty self-explanatory selections. One of them being the System Preferences panel we just mentioned, so let's select that and open it. And having done so, I'm going to click this red button to close it to demonstrate that that same panel can be accessed down here using this icon in the dock. So again, just to review, the System Preferences panel can be accessed to the Apple pull-down menu or down here on the dock. And for any of you PC users in the audience, the System Preferences panel is the equivalent to the Control panel. To the immediate right of the Apple menu is the App menu, which is contextual. You can see here that I've got System Preferences in focus, and so that menu is in context. Were I to click on the desktop, which is associated with the Finder, you can see that that App menu adjusts to the Finder. And so toggling back and forth here, you can see that that menu is in fact contextual, and when we get down to the dock part of this tour, we'll see other applications light up over here. And with the System Preferences having been introduced, let's move that aside and open up a new Finder window. And to do that, we're going to come back over here to our App menu, click on the desktop to activate the Finder, and come over to our File pull-down menu here. And here's the first way of doing it for the pull-down menu. I'm going to close this window to demonstrate the second way by clicking this red button. The second way is to take note of this hotkey command right here. And now's as good a time as any to start committing these hotkey flashcards here to memory. And so from here on in this video series, I'm going to show where different pull-down selections are, and then hit the escape key to bail out of this pull-down selection and then implement that hotkey command. So again, I'm going to hit the escape key to bail out of this pull-down selection, and I'm going to press Command-N to open that new Finder window. And this time, rather than click the red button, another way of closing this window, which is standard to closing any window on a Mac, is pressing the Command W. And then finally, the third way to open a new Finder window is to just come down to the dock and click on the Finder icon. And again, for you PC users, a Mac OS Finder window is the equivalent to a Windows Explorer window. And while we happen to have a Finder window open, let's talk about their ties to the items found in this Go pull-down menu. These pull-down selections are key locations on your local drive and on your iCloud drive. And while we just so happen to be right on top of our Finder window, note how some of these locations are already positioned on the sidebar of our Finder window. And don't be thrown if your sidebar looks different from this. We're going to be talking about the sidebar at length in a dedicated video. And whenever we select one of these locations, either by way of the sidebar, by way of the pull-down menu or by way of using hotkeys, an open Finder window is going to repopulate with that latest location selected. So we can see here that we're currently in Recents, and I'm going to first demonstrate by coming to the Home directory in the pull-down menu, and when I select that, you'll see the sidebar update, you'll see the Finder window contents update, and you'll also see this title bar update up here. Now, were we able to right click on this title bar, we'd see a breadcrumb trail that shows us exactly where we are in the hard drive, but we haven't set that up yet. But if you recall at the beginning of this video, pressing down the control key and mouse at the same time is equivalent to the right click action, so here's that breadcrumb trail. So you can see the computer to the hard drive to the user, which is me, to my home directory. We'll make that right click adjustment in just a second, but first let's check out a couple more Go locations, and this time I'm going to use some hotkeys. So I'm hitting escape, and I'm going to use my hotkeys to jump to desktop. So I'm pressing Command-Shift-D. I'm going to jump to Documents by pressing Command-Shift-O. I'm going to Downloads by pressing Command-Option-L. And as you can see, there's nothing in Downloads, so not much to see here. And finally, let's jump over to iCloud Drive by pressing Command-Shift-I. And now if there's no Finder window open to repopulate, and we make a selection, then the Finder will open a new location for us. And it just so happens I want to go to Applications, so I'm going to press Command-Shift-A. And to fix that right-click issue, we have to go over to our System Preferences panel. And before going into the mouse settings to fix my right-click, let's first go into Trackpad here. And you'll see that I've got nothing going on here. It's searching for something. The reason being I have no trackpad plugged into my iMac, and so this is just going to spin and spin. And now were you to be on a MacBook, you would have settings here, and perhaps your mouse settings would be doing this. So let's hit this waffle icon to get back to the main panel and go into my mouse settings. And where I, on my iMac, have a mouse connected, I have these selections to make which have little videos to accompany. And alternately, you MacBook users would see similar selections in your trackpad settings. So anyway, the reason we're in here is to fix that right click thing, which is a matter of clicking this second button here, which is deselected by default for some particular reason. And we just want to make sure that it's pull down to click on right side. And while we just so happen to be in here, let's check out the upper and lower selections as well. As you can see, the gesture to this bottom selection is very similar to double clicking, and I find that I'm always zooming in when I'm trying to double click, and so I keep this on check. And as we watch the video for this upper selection, you can see the person is scrolling by brushing their finger vertically on their magic mouse. I'm going to do the same over here in my Applications window, and so I'm brushing vertically to scroll. And as I do that, notice how the scroll bar here appears and disappears when I scroll. So when I brush, it appears and then it disappears. That's the default setting. And of course I can get over there fast enough and grab it, and then I can really zip up and down. Now I prefer this default where that automatically appears and disappears, but if you opted to see this bar at all times, you could fix that by coming back to your System Preferences panel, clicking this waffle icon which brings you back to the main panel, and then selecting the General tab. And then here, if you come down to this Always Radio button, you'll see that that's locked in place. So like I said, I prefer the default, so I'm going to put it back to where it was. But again, if you wanted to lock that in view, that's how you would go about doing so. And getting back to the main System Preferences panel by clicking this waffle icon again, we're all set with making mouse selections for now. But let's make sure that our right click setting kicked in by coming over to our title bar over here, and I'm hovering over it and right clicking, and it does work. And alternately, I'm pressing the control key and the mouse down at the same time, and you can see that the functionality is identical. And to drive that home, I'm just coming into the desktop here and I'm right clicking. You get this pull down menu. I'm hitting escape, and now I'm pressing the control and the mouse again. So you can see again that the functionality is identical. Now bringing our attention down to the dock, there's not a lot to talk about in here. Just move the sliders and click the radio buttons to set things up as you like them, and it's straightforward as that. But while the dock happens to be the topic of discussion, I'm going to point out another hotkey combination that may be of particular interest to MacBook users who are on a smaller screen. For me personally, I find the dock to be a little bit clunky and intrusive. I just don't need that much real estate being taken up by something that I seldom need to get to. And so actually on my 27-inch iMac, I bring it down small as that, and the magnification helps me see what I'm looking for when I do go down there. Better yet is to just completely take it out of view, and to do so I'm coming down to my dock area and I'm pressing Command Option D, D as in dock, and when I press those keys you'll see the dock slide out of view. And then if I need anything on my dock, I just hover in that general area, it comes up into view, I grab what I need, and then I hover away and it hides. And you can toggle the dock in and out of view by just pressing those same keys, Command Option D. Now after that, right click, dock settings, detour, let's get back up to our top menu and move it over to the right hand side where we see these status menu icons. And it's called the status menu as these little icons offer visual cues in regards to an app's current state of affairs. Right here, as a matter of fact, you can see that this is lit up red because the program that I'm recording this video in is in record mode, obviously, and so it's lit up red, so that's the status. You can see here my iCloud Drive is notifying me that there's an update available, and of course the clock is pretty self-explanatory. It lets you know the status of the time. And if you happen to be on a MacBook, you'd see your battery level here as well. Some icons that appear here, like the clock, the speakers, the Wi-Fi, are tied into the system itself, and they can be toggled in and out of view by way of the System Preferences panel. So case in point, we've got the sound system up here. So if I come down to sound and check this box, you'll see this little speaker toggle in and out of view, like so. If I come to displays, we have our little screen mirroring here, like so. And one that I like to keep into view at all times is my time machine. As a matter of fact, I'm going to invoke a backup right now. And you can see that little triangle light up over here, which is an indicator that a backup is underway. And time machine is found down here, and that checkbox for time machine is right there. In addition to system-related icons, you would also see status menu icons for devices that are physically connected to your computer, such as my Wacom tablet seen here. And that status menu icon is right up here. Another external device that I happen to have connected is my microphone to record this video, and were I to launch that app, you would see that status menu icon appear in the status bar. Any other icons that might appear here might be wired to your printers, cameras, and so on. And then finally, there's icons that tie into web-based apps such as my iCloud Drive account here, which is again letting me know I have an update available. You might also see a Dropbox up here and so on. Many of these web-based apps give you the option of adding them to this menu upon installation. If you'd like to rearrange these icons for any particular reason, you can do so by pressing down the Command key and then pressing the icon and dragging like so. Again, you press down the Command key, press down on the icon, and then drag into position. Moving to the right of our status menu icons is this US flag, which is tied into the keyboard preferences, and that's a dedicated video. There's a lot to say about the keyboard. And then next to the keyboard is the user, which is me. Again, another dedicated video on adding multiple users. This would jump us down here to users and groups, like so. And then we come to Spotlight, which is a really powerful search engine. Choose that, and of course the parameters of Spotlight can be set here. And this is not only system-wide, but this goes out online as well, so it's a pretty powerful search option. And then next to Spotlight is Siri. For you PC users, Siri is the equivalent to Cortana, and of course Siri has parameters that can be set as well for calling on him or her for help. And finally, in the upper right hand corner is this notifications icon. It triggers a slide out panel where your email, text, reminders, and social notifications are stored. Having already spent a bit of time on any of your Apple devices, you've surely seen these little banners slide in and out of view. Sometimes you'll appreciate a helpful reminder to pop up so you remember a birthday or an appointment. But these informative little flyouts are anything but helpful when you're giving a PowerPoint presentation to a room full of people, or if you're recording a video as I am now. To easily accommodate those situations where these banners are helpful and then when they're not, you can mute them by toggling this icon on and off. Simply click on this icon while pressing down the Option key, and you see when I click, it's dimmed, and that's an indicator that they're muted. And then if I want to unmute, I click again to unmute them. Just know that when you Option click to mute, that muting stays in effect until the stroke of midnight, and then notifications will automatically unmute itself. This little icon is a handy way of globally muting and unmuting all of your notifications, but if you wanted to do so on a more granular level, you would do so down here in this notifications panel. And as you might assume, that's a dedicated video. We're finally finished talking about this little tiny sliver of real estate up here, and it was a rather lengthy discussion. And disproportionately, the next discussion on the desktop itself is pretty short. To make way for that, I'm going to close the System Preferences and clear away the Finder window, and I'm going to mess things up a little bit and come right back. For all of those folders and files that you choose to keep readily available on your desktop, there are a few ways of organizing them. In the Finder View menu, you can sort things by name, kind, and so forth. So I'm going to choose kind, and you'll see this pile on my desk kind of sort into nice little piles, like so. And back in the release of the Mojave operating system, Stacks was introduced, which allows you to organize things even further. Of course, Stacks can be invoked in different ways by way of the pull-down menu, using the hotkey command, but the easiest way is just to simply right-click. There are two different ways of previewing the contents that are nested in a stack. The first one is to click to expand, click again to contract, and you click to expand, click again to contract. And then the second way is to hover over a stack with your cursor and then brush horizontally with your trackpad or mouse. And when you do, you should see a little slideshow. You'll see little thumbnails flip through. So let's try that. They're a little on the tiny side, but you can get a pretty good idea of what they are, especially if they're pictures. The Finder menu's View, Show View Options panel offers even more options on how your desktop items can be viewed. And I'm going to use the hotkey as usual. I'm pressing Escape and pressing the Command-J keys. At the very top of this panel is yet another way to invoke and uninvoke stacks. And this bottom pull down allows you to sort the items whether they're stacked or not. And then the remainder of the options in this panel are pretty self-explanatory. Just play around with them and set what appeals to you. But if you like that idea of brushing horizontally to see the slideshow, you may want to keep this guy up in size because they're small enough as it is. And one more thing before we move along is pointing out the fact that this View Option panel is contextual, and you can see that right now it's in context with the desktop. And in videos to come, you'll be seeing that it's going to be quite the point of discussion, so you'll be seeing this panel again very soon. And as we now move on from the desktop and onto the dock, notice first how the Mac desktop doesn't have any shortcuts to C and D drives as you would see on a PC. That's because a Mac only has one drive, and the trash bin that you would typically see in that general area where the drives would be is actually found down here on the dock. And so now let's talk about the dock. And again, the trash bin is anchored to the far right end of the dock. And conversely, the Finder icon is anchored to the far left end of the dock. And while we're currently at the left end of the dock, a little side note on this space just next to the Finder icon. By way of Bluetooth, your other iOS devices will make their presence known here. I have Notes currently running on my iPad, and when I bring that into focus, you'll see that slide into view. I also have Messages running on my iPhone. Same thing when I bring that into focus. And bringing our attention back to the dock, Mention was just made that the Finder was anchored into place and that the trash bin was anchored into place. These two bookend items cannot be moved, but the items in between can be moved by pressing, dragging, and releasing. Again, you press, drag, and release. Now this can be a bit of a fiddly maneuver because if you long press, you're actually going to call up a drop-up menu. So if you get this drop-up menu, just hit the escape key and take another stab at it. So you just very gingerly press, drag, and release. The dock is divided into 3 distinct sections, and those 3 sections are delineated by these 2 vertical bars seen here. In the first section, along with the Finder and System Preferences icon, you can pin any assortment of frequently used applications. We're going to be doing that in just a bit, so let's reopen the Applications window. And again, that's found up here. And as usual, I'm going to hit Escape and use the hotkeys, Command-Shift-A. But before we actually do start pinning apps, let's talk about the other 2 sections of the dock. This second middle section displays unpinned apps that are currently running or have recently been run. This is actually a buffer section that maxes out at only 3 icons. As such, it continually refreshes to display the 3 most recently active unpinned apps. Moving on to the third section, the Downloads folder is typically seen in here with the trash bin, as are Minimize Windows. So if I press this yellow button, you'll see this Applications window shrink down next to the trash bin. And this is a similar function on a PC where you to minimize a window down to the taskbar, Mac Windows minimize down to the dock. And finally, in this third section, you can pin shortcuts to folders and files, which we'll be doing in a short while. So let's unminimize our Applications window and start pinning some apps. But before we start pinning from the Applications window, let's first pin from our buffer area here because I use these and want them pinned. So I'm going to just press and drag into place. And again, you can see that I long pressed and got this drop-up menu, so I'm going to hit Escape as mentioned earlier and take another stab at it. So I just press and drag like so. And now I'm going to grab my Adobe apps and drag those up in this area. And you can see that as I drag these, our buffer area shrinks down. And when I finally drag this last icon into place, this buffer area is just going to completely collapse. Like so. Now it will repopulate once I drag in another unpinned app. So I'll just launch Dropbox. And I don't want to go through all of this now, but you can see what I mean. It populates. So I'm going to long press and quit and get on with our pinning. So with our lone Dropbox in our buffer area, which we're ignoring, we're going to get on over here and pin a few more apps. Now as we're finally in the Applications window and ready to pin, I'm going to first offer a little side note that I think you'll find helpful whenever you're in a folder that requires a bit of scrolling, like this Applications window does. And here it's important to note that I'm clicking inside of this window pane and I'm not clicking in this search field when I do this. This search field is a different conversation in and of itself. And right now we're focused on pinning apps. And the point I'm trying to make is if you are in a rather full folder and need to do a bit of scrolling to find what you're looking for, if you happen to know the name of the app or file that you're looking for, you can start to type that in and the Finder will jump right to it and highlight it for you. And so case in point, I'm going to try to locate Safari by typing in SA to start. And you can see that the Finder jumps right down to it. Now let's go a little bit further. I'm going to type in UT for my utilities and we jump right down to that. So now let's jump up to the Adobe apps because that's what I'm looking to pin. So I type in AD and we're up there. And so up here at the Adobe section, I'm going to skip this DC application. And we already have Creative Cloud pinned, so I'm going to collapse this folder by clicking this triangle. And incidentally, you can collapse and uncollapse subfolders in list view by clicking this triangle. We also pinned Adobe Illustrator, so we can collapse that folder. Now let's go down to Adobe InCopy, which I use, and I'm going to uncollapse that folder and grab my InCopy app, drag that into place. And I think you get the drift, but I'm just going to do my housekeeping while we're here. And that will do for now. Having pinned a few more apps to the first section of our dock, let's now pin a file and a folder to the third section of our dock. And to do that, I'm going to come back to our window here, and I'm going to switch over to my documents, and to show you the hotkey for doing so, even though I have the sidebar right here, I'm hopping on these hotkeys. So our hotkey for documents is Command-Shift-O, so I'm hitting escape. And with our active window in focus, I'm pressing Command-Shift-O, and we're in documents. And in here, I'm going to drill on down to my in progress, because I want to pin things that I'm currently working on. And I'll just randomly grab this first folder, press and drag that down into the third section, like so. And then let's uncollapse that folder and drag a specific file down to the dock. So again, a file or a folder can be included in the third section. And when you pin your currently active folders and files down on the dock, you bypass the need to have to open a Finder window to get at them. Now I don't want these down here, I'm not currently working on them, so I'm going to press on them and drag up. And you can see as I move up, I get this remove tag, and as soon as I see that, I can let go, and you'll hear a poof sound when I do. So let's get rid of that folder. Oh, and before I get rid of the folder, they can be expanded using this button right here. Similar function to expanding and contracting your stacks. You can do the same with folders in the dock like so. And this button will actually open a Finder window for you. So anyway, I don't want this, so I'm going to drag up. I'm going to see my remove tag show up, and I'm going to let go and wait for the poof. And now that we've pinned a few apps, let's try launching a few. Interestingly, when you long press certain apps like Corel Painter, you can simultaneously launch the app and open a specific file. And then other apps like those in the Adobe Cloud have to be launched before you can target specific files. And when you do launch an app, you're going to see a tiny little dot beneath its dock icon. These little dots are visual cues that that app is in fact currently running. And note that you're always going to see a little dot underneath the Finder icon. That positively will not quit until you quit your computer. And to demonstrate, I'm going to click to open a Finder window. And coming up to the Finder menu, you'd be hard pressed to find any kind of a command for quitting that application, because it's not an application, it's the computer itself. And this is where a Mac and a PC totally part ways. And as a case in point, were we on a PC and this were an Explorer window, when I closed this Explorer window, the Explorer application would quit. But if we look back down at our Finder icon, you can see in fact that we still have a little dot. So it's a key difference between a Mac and a PC. And as we now have a few applications running alongside of our constantly running Finder, I want to point out a really important hotkey that I'm going to be harping on for the rest of this series, and that is the Command-Tab Hotkey combination. And to explain that hotkey combination, I'm going to press down the Command key with my thumb, and I'm going to keep it pressed down. And now with another finger, I'm going to just tap on the Tab key. And the first time I hit the Tab key, you're going to see a bar appear in the center of the screen. And on that bar, you're going to see all the apps that are running. So I'm going to hit the Tab key, the bar appears, and you can see that I toggled from in copy to my Finder icon. And as I continue to tap while my thumb stays pressed on the Command key, I toggle through the different apps that are running, as well as the Finder that constantly runs. And so as I toggle through, if I want to target a particular application, so let's go to Adobe Illustrator. As soon as I release the Command key, I raise my thumb, you're going to see Adobe Illustrator stack on top of in copy. So I'm going to let go, and that in fact happens. I'm going to press that Command key down again, and I'm going to tab over to Painter. You can see Painter comes into the foreground. And the big advantage to using this hotkey combination is you can toggle different applications into view. I'm bringing Illustrator to the top of the stack. And doing it this way, it saves you the bother of having to move windows out of the way or minimize them down to the dock. All you have to do is Command-Tab to a particular application, and it comes front and center. And importantly, while we're talking about running multiple apps You really don't want to see too many dots down here, no matter how jacked your computer is, because the applications that you're actually using at the moment can become notably laggy when you're unnecessarily running apps that you're not using. Added to that, it's just unnecessary wear on your drive. And if a laggy application seizes up, you're sure to see what is famously known as the spinning beach ball of death. When apps freeze up like this on a PC, the course of action is to press the Control-Alt-Delete keys. On a Mac, you would force quit seized up apps by pressing your Command-Option-Escape keys, like so. Now, I'm not seized up, so I'm just going to close this window out, but that's how you would go about doing it. This ball doesn't just show up when an app freezes, it also appears when the drive is being maxed out. If the beach ball makes frequent appearances, you really do need to quit a few apps, and you can do so in multiple ways. One way is through the application's pull-down menu, and you can see here that the hotkey command is Command-Q, and that's a universal quitting command. So I'm going to, as always, press the escape key and press Command-Q to quit Corel Painter. And I don't want to save, so I'm going to close. The other way is to long press on the dock icon, which we've done before with Dropbox. So I'm going to quit Illustrator by long pressing. And Illustrator is quit. You can see the dots go away as these apps quit. And another way is through that Command-Tab Hotkey command. So again, I'm pressing down the Command key with my thumb. I'm tapping on the Tab key to bring up our bar here. And you can see that I'm toggling through. So currently I'm on In Copy with my thumb still pressed down. I'm actually going to press the Q key, and you'll see In Copy quit. And as emphatically mentioned, we cannot quit Finder, so let's tab over to InDesign and press the Q key to quit that. And then finally, let's press the Q and quit Google Chrome. And so that concludes our tour of the desktop. And as often mentioned in this tour, the Find a Window and System Preferences panel warrant dedicated discussions. And those discussions begin with a Find a Window in the next video. Hope to see you there, and thanks for watching.